New tropical storm forming north of Madagascar on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for May 16th. We still have no active tropical cyclone, but one is getting mighty close and should become a tropical cyclone maybe today or tonight, and that's the one in the southwest Indian Ocean off the northern tip of Madagascar near some of the islands of the Seychelles. We'll get on to that in just a minute. Looking interesting, but first to the Atlantic, where it's 16 days until the hurricane season begins, and I'm happy to tell you that we've still got no areas of interest to talk about. But what you can see on the corner of your eye there is the Eastern Pacific system, which is now up to a 40% chance, along with the National Hurricane Center's update there in line with that, on day 2 of hurricane season here in the Eastern Pacific, covering this system right now, which is expected to move along the west to west-northwest over the next 7 days and has a significant chance of developing, but not yet set in stone. In the Western Pacific, the chances of that system forming anytime soon have decreased. 10% chance on that area of interest that we've been watching for quite a while in the deep tropics in the Micronesian islands. Though long-range models haven't given up on it, it looks in the short range as though the chances will be very slim. No areas of interest in the North Indian Ocean at this point, but there is quite a bit of cloud cover off the eastern coast of India, which is certainly producing significant amounts of rainfall, but we're not expecting it to become cyclonic. And so we're giving a 90% chance for this area of interest now, which is located northeast of Madagascar near some of the Seychelles, the Farquhar island group in particular, likely to become our next tropical cyclone. It already contains tropical storm force winds. Let's look at it even closer then. It's 36 kilometers from Providence Atoll, 104 from Farquhar Atoll, 403 from Antsiranana in Madagascar, 408 from Astove, and 532 from Grande Terre, the westernmost reach of the Seychelles. So it currently contains winds of around 40 miles per hour, estimated pressure of 1002 millibars. Why is it not a tropical cyclone yet? Well, its circulation is still yet to come together, and it's looking very sloppy at the moment. It needs maybe up to 24 hours to fix that. You wouldn't think so looking at satellite imagery though, but I can tell you the low levels aren't quite ready for it yet. But the higher levels were clearly showing substantial amounts of convection, so clearly producing a lot of rain underneath there already, and it is getting its act together. A big burst there of convection which has been sustained for quite a long time now, but you can just see there that northern side not looking quite as good. We'll come back to imagery on that in a moment. Western Pacific looks like this. You can see 2 banks of convection blowing up there, but where exactly would be the center of this system? I'm not sure, probably somewhere in the middle. Eastern Pacific looks like this, so you can see a wide shot there, a few little things blowing up along the coast of Central America and into Guatemala and Mexico, and somewhere out of that will come that potential cyclone. Further out to sea in the Eastern Pacific, still looking pretty quiet there, of course. Very early on to be seeing anything way out over the open ocean, but quite a lot of cloud cover heading up towards Mexico. Here's a close-up from the NOAA floaters of that area of interest, then 92S back in the southwest Indian Ocean, and showing you some infrared and visible imagery there, and now water vapor imagery showing really high cloud tops, definitely huge amounts of moisture in that, particularly on the southern side. And that will probably continue for a little while longer yet before it wraps around that northern side, which will probably happen by the time we get to the end of the 48-hour period. And that's what we think, at least. Meteo France are forecasting this to become at least a moderate tropical storm, if not a severe tropical storm. And there's a close-up now of the Western Pacific system. So again, 2 banks of convection, really no structure to it at all though, and no circulation or anything kind of rotation in there, at least at the minute, as far as we can see on this infrared imagery. But some of it is producing pretty high cloud tops into the -80s in 1 or 2 spots there, and that's been sustaining. In the Atlantic, we've got a bank of convective tops really starting to blow up now over the Western Atlantic towards Bermuda. And this is the Eastern Atlantic. Looking at the African region, it's looking very quiet here still, but this is the area we'll watch out for potential main development region activity later on. There's the Eastern Pacific, a big cell there moving over El Salvador. That could be the disturbance we're watching. We'll have to wait and see. And that's further out to sea, where you can see a few other little systems there as well. Wide shot of the Western Pacific again, showing that little bulk of cloud, and also a front moving through the northernmost reaches of the Philippines, producing some rain over Luzon. And lots of rainfall everywhere in the Bay of Bengal region into Indochina, and up the coast of Thailand into Myanmar, and off the east coast of India, maybe just a slight hint of rotation there as well. Well, in the Eastern Pacific, sea surface temperatures are very warm south of Guatemala. That's the high point right now. Temperatures pushing 32 degrees Celsius, in fact. For this potential area of interest, it'll certainly be off to a good start. In the Atlantic, those temperatures increasing all along the Gulf of Mexico coastlines. Up the western coast of Florida, temperatures pushing 28 degrees now, and on the eastern coast on the Gulf Stream, temperatures also looking good there as well. Caribbean Sea getting up to 29. In the Western Pacific, we're still looking decent with increasing temperatures at 30 degrees Celsius in a few spots, and still very warm in the South China Sea, particularly along the coast of Palawan. And in the Bay of Bengal, we're still looking at incredibly high temperatures over parts of the eastern Bay of Bengal into the Andaman Sea, where temperatures are pushing up and possibly above 32 degrees Celsius in a couple spots. Warm temperatures all the way up the bay now. Southwest Indian Ocean, where this system is, it's currently around 28 degrees Celsius. They might get a little bit higher, up towards 29 maybe, as it moves northwest for that potential system. Off Australia, temperatures are generally cooling, but there's still a few spots of 29 degrees Celsius in the usual places we've been pointing out in the last few days, including in the Gulf of Carpentaria, but the southern reaches of that coastline now are getting pretty chilly in comparison. And the South Pacific, not too much to talk about there either. Temperatures gradually decreasing, especially around New Caledonia, where temperatures are now down to 25. Compared to average, it looks like this. The Eastern Pacific, a narrow warm pool in the main development region there. In the Atlantic, a much larger warm pool in their main development region into the Caribbean Sea, up to 3 degrees above average. In the Western Pacific, it's near average to slightly above, depending where exactly you are, around the Philippines, particularly there, northwards. And in the Bay of Bengal, it's very warm, 3 degrees above average possibly. And where that system is in the Southwest Indian Ocean, it's 2 to 3 degrees above as well. Oceanic heat content still looks decent in a few spots of the South Pacific, but it is increasingly being confined to areas further north. Eastern Pacific still got some decent areas there, quite a few oranges now, energy increasing, also a little blob in the Gulf of Tehuantepec, and in the Western Pacific really ballooning up in energy now in the Philippine Sea, especially off Catanduanes. Atlantic hasn't changed a huge amount, but we are seeing a few more orange spots there in different parts of the Caribbean Sea, and off the other side, east of the Leeward Islands and the Lesser Antilles, looking good and increasing as a general rule over the whole basin. So let's see what the GFS computer model has in store over the next 5 days. This is the Eastern Pacific system that we're looking out for. There it is, it pops up for sure around the 18th or 19th and quickly develops into a tropical storm and then a hurricane according to the GFS model. And there it is, peaking as a category 2 or maybe even category 3. Curious thing about this is that the Euro model still doesn't have anything on this yet, apart from a weak disturbance occurring from another system further west. This particular system not forming at all according to that model. Now, the Southwest Indian Ocean, this system that we're watching, GFS reckons it will continue to struggle with its structure for a little bit longer until we get to probably the 18th, and then it will become a very concentrated tropical cyclone, stalling a little bit, darting towards the west just a little bit there, and then turning more directly towards the north, where it will eventually run into, I don't know whether it's going to be high wind shear or whether it's just going to run out of spin as it gets closer and closer to the equator up there. But that's what the model is showing there, with a moderate tropical storm peak by the looks of things. Could get to high end. Looking at the rainfall expectations from this storm though, you can see there's a few values there getting quite high over some of these small islands that we're talking about in the Seychelles, getting up to around 20 inches of rainfall in a few little spots there. You'd be unlucky to get it over one of the islands there, but that is 500 millimeters of rain possible for one or two of these areas. But certainly the main islands that we're talking about, certainly the capital, Victoria, you're probably going to get maximums of 5 inches, 125 millimeters, and Grande Terre getting 1 inch there, which is 25 millimeters, and parts of Madagascar getting a various amount there as well on the east coast. So in the longer range, day 5 to 10, what happens to that Eastern Pacific hurricane? Well, it just moves along pretty nicely, typical fashion for this time of year, of course, for any storm really, but it does stall a little bit towards the end of that, and then that is the harbinger of its weakening, and quite unusual actually to see it stall like that towards the end there. It is quite far out, but we do expect that movement towards the west will be sustained throughout the course of its track, west-northwest, and it will eventually start to weaken and die off. Now this is the Bay of Bengal, and GFS is throwing up certainly a very interesting scenario, a humongous tropical cyclone that decides it wants to form there and covering the whole Bay of Bengal and getting close to hurricane strength, would you believe, before it consolidates a little bit more and moves inland not far from Visakhapatnam in India. So that will be towards the end of that 10-day period, so it is uncertain as to whether anything like that will happen, but if it becomes more likely, we'll let you know. Scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all of our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. Still no sign of it yet, that's why we're wearing it. Still waiting for Hone. Still available. So into the Scilly range, that Eastern Pacific storm died off eventually, well out to sea, and the only other thing really to look at is this little system down in the South Indian Ocean. Could there be yet another system before we reach the end of this season? Well, there is a potential system, a wannabe system, and then it gets sucked into a front there, an extratropical cyclone in the end, and off it goes back towards the south-southeast, but it does have a small window there. It is long range, super long range, and even then it's not a glowing reference of a potential tropical cyclone there. So what happened on this day? Well, there's a few things that happened, but we're going to go back all the way to 1906 today, when we had a very powerful typhoon on the doorstep of the Philippine Islands, making a Category 4 landfall in the eastern Visayas region, number 2 of the year on May 16th, 1906. We don't know a huge amount about this storm's impacts, but after it moved through the Philippines, it weakened, it was still a typhoon, and then it recurved off to the north and then northeast, and then back out to sea. Back to today then, and the first name on the Atlantic naming list this year is Alberto. Alberto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, our next name is Hone, which we've been waiting for almost 5 years. We're still just about code unclassified, nearly went to blue today. In the West Pacific, the next name is Iwinia. In the North Indian Ocean, it's Remal. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, the names will change when we get to July the 1st, but until then we're still using the current naming list, even though we're getting off season. The next name is Iyali. In the Australian region, the next name is Robin, and in the South Pacific, it's Pitta. We have our automated stream running on the Force 13 channel if you want to check it out, and we'll have another tropical weather bulletin tomorrow.
Become an ultimate fan today.